The drill stopped without warning, and the room went quiet, except for my breathing. Dr. Hale pulled back and stared at his phone like it had just bitten him. He didn't explain. He just handed it to me. A man's voice came through the speaker, low and urgent. "Don't go home," he said. "They know where you live." My heart slammed so hard I felt it in my throat. I tried to ask who he was, but the line went dead. When I looked at Dr. Hale, his hands were shaking. "That call wasn't meant to scare you," he said. "It was meant to stop something." Before that moment, my life followed a quiet pattern. I lived alone in a small blue house at the edge of town, 2 bedrooms I barely used, and a porch that creaked when I stepped on it. Every Sunday night, I called my mother, Nola, and told her I was eating better than I was. My younger brother, Wes, stopped by sometimes, always short on cash and full of apologies. I worked at an insurance office where nothing ever changed. Same desk, same coworkers, same drive home. Dr. Hale had been my dentist for years. His office smelled like mint and cleaning spray, and he always kept the radio low so patients could relax. The waiting room had a fish tank with cloudy glass, and magazines no one read. That morning felt like any other. I checked in, sat down, and scrolled through my phone while the receptionist called my name. I drove there alone, parked in the same spot I always used, and didn't notice anyone watching. I didn't think about who might know my schedule or where I lived. I didn't think about danger at all. I thought about errands and dinner and getting back to work. Lying in that chair, staring at the ceiling tiles, I believed I was safe. I had no idea my address had already been passed around. I had no idea a stranger knew my name, my clothes, and my next move. That sense of normal ended the moment Dr. Hale handed me his phone, and nothing in my life would feel quiet again. Subscribe for more stories and tell me where you're watching from. After the call ended, the room felt smaller. The hum of the equipment sounded louder than before, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Dr. Hale took the phone back and locked the door to the exam room. He lowered his voice and said, "They called the office first." I asked who did, but he shook his head. "They didn't say. They only asked if you were there yet." That word yet settled deep in my chest. I sat up slowly, my mouth still numb, my thoughts racing. I asked him why he answered the call at all. He said it came through the main line, not his cell, and the caller knew his name. They knew mine too. They described my jacket, my shoes, the way my car was parked outside. "They wanted me to stall you," he said. I didn't like the sound of it. I stood up too fast and had to grab the counter to steady myself. I asked if he thought it was a joke. He didn't hesitate. "No," he said. "I've been doing this a long time." That wasn't a joke. He offered to call the police, but something stopped me. Panic makes your mind jump to places it doesn't belong, and mine went straight to my brother. I stepped into the hallway and called Wes. He answered on the 4th ring, breathless like he'd been running. I asked him where he was. He said, "Why?" I told him to answer me. He said he was at home. I asked him if he had told anyone where I lived. He went quiet. That silence felt louder than any alarm. "Wes," I said, "who knows my address?" He said my name like he was sorry before he said anything else. He admitted he owed money. Not to a bank, not to friends, to people who didn't ask twice. He said he never meant for them to look at me. He thought he had more time. My hands were shaking so hard I had to sit down on the bench by the window. I told him, "You don't get to decide that." He said they wanted leverage. He said they asked questions about me weeks ago. I hung up before he could say anything else. Dr. Hale watched my face and didn't ask questions. He handed me a cup of water and told me to breathe. I asked him if anyone had come by the office. He said a man had waited in the lobby earlier, pretending to fill out paperwork, watching the door. He left when my appointment started. That detail made my stomach drop. I hadn't been late by chance. Someone was tracking my time. I looked out the window and saw my car sitting where I left it. It felt exposed now, like a signal. I imagined driving home, pulling into my driveway, unlocking my door without knowing who might be waiting. The stranger's voice replayed in my head. "Don't go home. They know where you live." It didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like a warning. I told Dr. Hale I wasn't leaving alone. He nodded and said he wouldn't let me. He called the front desk and told them to cancel the rest of his appointments. Then he locked the main door. "You're not overreacting," he said. "Trust that feeling." I wanted to, but fear kept pressing in, fast and sharp. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. It said, "We know you're still there." No name, no explanation, just proof. I showed it to Dr. Hale. He swore under his breath. He asked if there was anyone I trusted nearby. I thought of my Uncle Ron. He lived across town and had spent years as a firefighter. He knew how to stay calm when things went wrong. I called Ron and told him I needed help without explaining everything. He didn't push. He said, "Stay put. I'm on my way." Hearing that made my knees weak with relief. For the first time since the phone call, I felt like I wasn't facing this alone. While we waited, another message came through. "You're making this harder." My chest tightened. I didn't reply. I turned my phone face down and focused on breathing. The office clock ticked louder than it ever had. Each second felt counted. I realized then that whatever was happening didn't start that day. It had been moving quietly around my life while I wasn't looking, and now it had found me sitting in a dentist's chair, forced to pay attention. Waiting stopped feeling like a pause and started feeling like a choice. I could sit in that locked office and hope someone else fixed this, or I could decide what happened next. Fear had pushed me this far, but now it was turning into something steadier. I wasn't going to disappear quietly or run without answers. I told Dr. Hale I needed to know everything he remembered about the call. He closed his eyes for a moment, replaying it. He said the voice was calm, almost polite. It asked if I was in the chair yet. When he said yes, the voice told him to keep me there as long as possible. "That's when I hung up," he said, and then it called back. He didn't say anything else, but I could tell he was angry with himself for answering the first time. My phone buzzed again, another message from the same number. "You can still make this easy." I felt my stomach tighten, but I didn't freeze. I showed it to Dr. Hale and said, "I'm done letting them lead." Saying it out loud made it feel real. I blocked the number, even though I knew that wouldn't stop them. It was still my move to make. I called Wes again. He answered fast this time, like he'd been waiting. I told him I knew everything, or enough of it. I told him people were watching me because of his choices. He started talking over me, apologizing, swearing he would fix it. I stopped him. "No," I said. "You don't get to fix this alone. You're coming clean." He said he couldn't. I told him he didn't have a choice anymore. "I'm not your shield," I said. "I'm not your leverage." He went quiet, then said, "They said they'd hurt you if I talked." My voice didn't shake when I answered. "They already tried." That was the truth. Whatever promise he thought he had meant nothing now. Dr. Hale listened without interrupting. When I hung up, he said, "You're doing the right thing." I didn't know if that was true, but it felt better than doing nothing. I told him I wanted the police involved, not later, now. He nodded and picked up the phone without hesitation this time. While we waited, I walked around the office, noticing things I never had before. The back exit, the windows, the way the parking lot was visible from the break room. I kept my keys in my hand like a reminder that I could move if I needed to. I wasn't trapped. I was choosing to stay put until help arrived. Ron called when he was 2 minutes away. "I'm outside," he said. "I see 2 cars I don't recognize." That sent a chill through me, but it also confirmed I wasn't imagining any of this. I told him not to approach alone. He agreed and said he'd wait for the police. Dr. Hale unlocked the front door when the officers arrived, their presence filling the space with a kind of order I hadn't felt all day. They asked me to tell the story from the beginning. I did. I didn't rush it. I didn't soften anything. When they asked about Wes, I gave them his name and everything I knew. It hurt, but it also felt clean, like finally telling the truth after holding it too long. One officer asked me what I wanted to do next. The question surprised me. I realized this was the turning point. I could still disappear for a while, stay quiet, hope it passed, or I could stay visible and make sure it didn't happen to someone else. I said, "I'm not going home, but I'm not hiding either." He nodded like he understood exactly what I meant. They walked me out through the back, Ron right beside me. He didn't say much, just stayed close. The air outside felt sharp and real, I looked at my car and didn't go to it. Instead, I got into the police vehicle. As the door closed, I felt something settle inside me. For the first time since the drill stopped, I wasn't reacting anymore. I had decided, and whatever came next would have to face me head on. The police drove me past my street before I even realized where we were going. I recognized the turn, the old oak tree on the corner, the mailbox with peeling numbers. My stomach tightened. I hadn't planned on seeing my house that night. An officer in the front seat said, "We need to check it." His voice was calm, like this was just another stop. For me, it felt like stepping towards something I had barely escaped. They parked a few houses down with the lights off. We didn't rush in. We waited. The quiet felt heavy, stretched too thin. I stared at my front porch, the light still on like I had left it that morning. It looked normal. That was the worst part. Normal had already lied to me once. One of the officers spoke into his radio. A moment later, another car pulled in from the other end of the street. They moved fast then, controlled but urgent. Ron stayed back with me, his hand firm on my shoulder. "Don't look if you don't want to," he said. I didn't answer. I couldn't look away. The front door was unlocked. An officer pushed it open slowly and stepped inside. The rest followed. I waited on the sidewalk, heart pounding so hard it made my ears ring. I kept thinking about my couch, my kitchen table, the photo of me and my mom on the fridge. I thought about how easily someone could have been standing inside, listening to my key turn in the lock. "Clear," someone called out from inside. Not safe, just clear. They let me come in once they finished checking every room. My house didn't look torn apart, but things were wrong. Drawers were open that I knew I had closed. My bedroom window was unlocked. A pair of shoes sat by the door that weren't mine. I felt cold all over. Someone had been waiting, or planning to. One officer picked up a phone from my coffee table. "This yours?" he asked. I shook my head. He turned it over carefully. "It's still warm." That made my knees weak. Whoever it belonged to hadn't been gone long. A noise came from outside. Shouting, fast footsteps. I turned just in time to see two officers rushing back in, one holding a man by the arm. He struggled at first, then stopped when he saw me. His eyes flicked over my face like he was checking a picture. That was when I knew. This was one of them. "You picked the wrong house," one officer said as he pushed the man against the wall. The man didn't look angry. He looked annoyed, like a plan had been ruined. He glanced at me and said, "You weren't supposed to be there today." His voice was flat, almost bored. That chilled me more than shouting ever could. They cuffed him and took him outside. Another officer stayed with me and asked if I was okay. I nodded, but it felt automatic. My hands were shaking again, slower this time, like after a storm. I realized how close I had been to walking into this without knowing. Then my phone rang. Wes. I stared at the screen before answering. When I did, he was crying, not quietly. He said my name over and over like he was afraid I would disappear. I told him to stop. "They're in my house," I said. "The police have one of them." He went silent. I said, "This ends tonight." He whispered, "I know." An officer took the phone and spoke to him calmly. When he handed it back, he said, "Your brother is cooperating." That didn't erase what had happened, but it changed what would happen next. Later, as they took statements, one officer explained it clearly. The men were trying to pressure Wes through me. They didn't plan to hurt me at the dentist. They planned to wait until I was alone at home. The call had disrupted everything. Timing had been their weakness. I stood in my living room, surrounded by people who had shown up because I didn't ignore a warning. The stranger's voice, Dr. Hale's fear, my decision to stay visible, all of it lined up into one clear truth. I wasn't special. I was lucky, and luck only mattered because I listened. As they led the man away, he looked back at me one last time, not with anger, with calculation. I met his eyes and didn't look away. For the first time since that drill stopped, I felt steady. Whatever power he thought he had was gone, and whatever fear had followed me all day finally loosened its grip. I didn't sleep in my house that night. After the police finished their work, Ron drove me to my mother's place. She opened the door before I even knocked, like she had been standing there waiting. She didn't ask questions right away. She just wrapped her arms around me and held on. I didn't realize how tense my body had been until it finally let go. The next few days moved slowly. I gave more statements. I answered calls from numbers I didn't recognize. All of them official, all of them serious. The man they caught near my house wasn't the only one involved. He talked more than they expected him to. Once Wes started cooperating too, the whole thing unraveled faster. I saw my brother a week later at the station. He looked smaller than I remembered, like the weight he'd been carrying finally showed on his face. He tried to apologize, but I stopped him. "I know you didn't mean this," I said, "but it happened." He nodded, eyes down. That was the first honest moment we'd had in years. He faced charges tied to the money and the people he dealt with. He didn't fight it. Watching him accept that was painful, but it was also necessary. Some problems don't disappear. They end. Dr. Hale called to check on me. He said the office was cooperating fully and that he still replayed that call in his head. "I almost didn't answer," he said. I told him that answer changed everything. We both sat in that quiet for a second before hanging up. I never went back to finish that appointment, but somehow that felt right. I moved out of my house a month later, not because I was afraid, but because it didn't feel like mine anymore. I found a small apartment closer to work, with brighter windows and neighbors who waved when they passed. The first night I slept there, I left the lights on. I didn't feel weak for doing it. I felt aware. Life didn't turn dramatic after that. It turned deliberate. I started paying attention in ways I never had before. I noticed when something felt off and didn't talk myself out of it. I kept my phone charged. I shared my schedule with people I trusted. I learned that being careful didn't mean being scared. It meant being present. My relationship with my family changed too. I didn't rush through calls with my mother anymore. I listened. When she asked questions, I answered honestly. Lena started calling more often, sometimes just to talk about nothing. Those calls mattered now. They always had, but I understood it differently. There were moments when the memory came back sharp, walking into quiet rooms, hearing phones ring unexpectedly, seeing unfamiliar cars parked too long. When that happened, I stopped and breathed instead of panicking. I reminded myself that I had handled something real, something dangerous, and come out the other side without hiding. What stays with me most is how ordinary the warning was. A phone call, a voice that didn't yell or threaten, just information given at the right time. I think about how easily it could have been ignored, how close I was to brushing it off and going home like nothing had changed. That thought still makes my stomach tighten. I don't live in fear now. I live with respect for how fragile normal can be. I trust my instincts more. I ask questions sooner. I don't assume safety just because things look calm on the surface. Sometimes I picture myself still sitting in that dentist's chair, believing the rest of the day would go as planned. I feel grateful for the interruption, grateful for a stranger who spoke up, a dentist who listened, and the choice I made not to walk away from the warning. That moment didn't define me, but it did teach me something clear. Paying attention can save your life, and sometimes the most important decision you make is choosing not to go home. If you want more stories, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from.